So I am nervous that it is just about money and people only think on what value is. It used to be as a kid, I was buying things. I'm like, oh, can I get this? Oh, that's cool. Oh, that happens to be worth that. Now it's like instant lookup, instant money. We saw it happen in sneakers and stuff too. And that's what I think has helped, kind of torpedoed a lot of things in that market. Everything is just gamified and gambling in essence. And I think we're going to see huge issues of, especially young men specifically, like, you don't win. They built Vegas. They built all of these things. All those big buildings aren't there for charity.
Avery, we're back. We are ready to go. We want to recognize that these are crazy times. Everything from the LA fires, which I know we'll talk about with our next guest, but also, we're about to go, when we record this, which is Thursday, when this debuts, it's Inauguration Day. So I just want to know, how we feeling? How we doing in here?
It has been a week. First and foremost, thinking of all those affected who continue to be affected by the catastrophe in LA. Second, there is the inauguration. Third, there is a looming TikTok ban. The current sentiment is that the app will be going down on Sunday. Let's see if that happens. I think people are still sort of reeling from Meta's content moderation policy change and the whole change of heart from our boy Zuck. So it's really been a pretty interesting week and very interesting start to the year. A lot of things happening, a lot of kind of like chaos energy of waiting to see where things will settle is how I'm feeling. How are you feeling, Sam?
I'm feeling similar. I keep wondering about two things, which I think you touched on both of them. But in many ways, things are going to change dramatically on Monday. In many ways, they're going to stay exactly the same. And especially, I think, for folks who live in some of the cities we live in, we're day to day, we're living, our lives. And so what happens is going to be more about a long tail effect, which I'm interested to see how that goes. I thought it interesting. You mentioned the Zuck conversation, this idea of trying to reclaim masculinity, I think is a really fascinating one, because I also kind of wonder what we're trying to reclaim masculinity from.
Yes.
And I also think, and I've had a number of conversations with some female friends of mine who feel like it's just going to get a little unsafer because there's a confidence in this sort of toxic masculinity that's coming around, which is not, I think, what masculinity is. So I'm really interested to see where that goes. I don't want to bog our podcast down with that. But the thing that I actually was thinking about, which I wanted to ask you about when we think about it from the brand level, I was at lunch with a woman who works in the climate space, and we were sort of talking about is the idea of sustainability initiatives dead right now. And that to be a brand who in this environment where you have both the government, but also in many ways, all of your big tech leaders kind of avoiding the green question and the sustainability question. And you have folks like Microsoft investing in nuclear. Like there's a lot of stuff happening that make me wonder. It's not just that, DEI is under attack, but I think actually like climate and sustainability is under attack while we see things like the LA fires. Do you think from a brand perspective that brands are sort of feeling that it's not the right and appropriate time to have sustainability discussions?
I think yes. One, on sustainability. Two, on DE&I, which is another place that we've seen funding reduce and conversations around this actually sort of dissipating, given everything that's happening in the political climate and I would say more broadly, the sentiment of the American people. What people are saying that they want to hear more of or less of. There's been a lot of like economic pressure and focus on that over certainly the past year. And I do think that conversation, people are treading carefully. I think how I would frame it is maybe they're covering their bases in terms of there are a lot of amazing things that big companies are doing to focus on sustainability, but it's a lot less loud than it was a few years ago. I think people are also scared of greenwashing. They're scared of being perceived trying to do something that ends up backfiring because there's been a lot of that's happened. So I feel like it's almost a PR like threading of the needle of covering your bases, but not being too loud about it because you don't want to isolate people. You go to try to stand up for something like gay rights, you end up getting canceled. It's a tightrope to walk.
Yeah. I even think about it through the lens of people's economic reality. I live in New York. It's an expensive city. I can go down the street to my local Duane Reade CVS to buy cough drops, or I can get them on Amazon literally for 50% of the cost. But that 50% comes with, being sent in a, poly wrap bag that is like, yes, it has a recycled logo, but I have to drop it off at a store that's 3 miles away in order to do that. And
exactly.
So there's a lot of this reality, which I think is the kind of when we were in a very green, sustainable world, we allowed ourselves that this stuff is going to cost more having a daughter, for example, who has celiac, and knowing that she literally has like a 40% tax on all of her food, because to buy gluten-free is to buy much more expensive. We were doing that across so many different areas, and people were willing to pay it, but they're not willing to pay anymore. And so I also wonder if that's part of the challenge, is we have to figure out the ways to make, sustainability attractive, but also cost effective.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring this up. Another thing that happened this week, red dye 3 was actually just banned. So a lot of big CPG companies, a lot of big food companies use these types of hyper processed ingredients, to your point now, Sam. And the reason they do that is it's much more cost effective. So I think we're seeing a lot of these things come to a head, and a lot of sort of like, let's see what happens energy is how I'm feeling on this specific day.
Yeah, for sure.
Being ready for anything.
Being ready for it, yes. And with that, I will say, and I, again, don't want to make it about this podcast about it, but I've been going down such a rabbit hole in ultra processed foods, and realizing that like so much of my diet is still so terrible and killing me, that it is something that recognizing, I think the Daily did an episode on this, where recognizing that the ultra processed food market started by the tobacco companies diversifying out of tobacco into other foods and making them equally as addictive.
I think that's exactly right. It's funny because there's also this thing that was like, is this ultra processed or not? And it was a lot of my like favorite yogurts or snacks. And I was like, darn it. But then some that you're like, how is that not ultra processed? They weren't. It begs the question of, how are you defining ultra processed? I'm sure they had a methodology. But anyway, I'm really excited for our guest to come on. Sam, this is someone who is such an icon in culture, in sports, in media, in music, done a lot of cool work on the brand side as well. So one that I think our Gen Z community will really appreciate. It is going to be the one and only DJ Skee.
We love DJ Skee, friend, and also just such an amazing entrepreneur. And as you mentioned, like trend spotter, and guy just does so much. He is so good at what he does. So after the break, we're going to come back with an amazing conversation we have with DJ Skee.
We all want to believe in something. In Chinese, belief also means trust. We want to trust our systems and each other, to explore new frontiers and build a future beyond what we know. For the past 10 years at Consensus, pioneers, builders, and dreamers have gathered together to create a new financial system where everyone has value. Join us at Consensus Hong Kong, where belief becomes real.
All right, we are here with the only DJ Skee, entrepreneur, investor, artist, founder of the Realist. Just this man does it all. Skee, we're going to get into a lot in this conversation. We're so excited to have you here. I've been looking forward to this. I just want to know, like I go on your socials. There is nothing you are not at. There's nothing you're not doing. There's no one you're not hanging out with. Like, how do you get it all done? How do you find the time? What does it mean to be like the day in the life of DJ Skee?
Well, it's social media, right? So we share the highlights of those things, right? So it's a glorified thing. You don't show all the grinding and all the hard work and all the negatives and all that stuff, obviously. But for me, no day is the same, right? Like people ask that a lot. And fortunately, right, like my life is, all over the place. You never know where you're going to be, where you're going to end up. I mean, I would have never thought, given all the stuff that's happened in LA recently, like the other week, DJing NFL playoffs for the LA Rams in Arizona for a home game. Like, right? Like, it's just like really weird. I mean, it shows the nature of the world and those things, to then, being in the sidelines. The Eagles next week for, partnership that we have with them, running all their memorabilia at the Realist, right? So like, no day is the same. I mean, I always just try to say I ride the wave and go where things take you. We make plans and then just kind of see where things evolve. And I've been fortunate to just find my passions and the things that I love and figure out how to make a living out of it at the end of the day.
I love that. And Skee, you have so many different dimensions to you as a person and as a business leader. Can you tell us a little bit about just like your own journey? The first moment that, things started to take off, you just mentioned being sidelined at like NFL games and DJing these huge things. Like, how did that start? And what was that sort of like first moment when you were like, I feel like I have something?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I look back in my life and I look at there being a few like, there's key moments that define, like they always say like, luck is where, opportunity meets preparation. And it couldn't be more true for me, like going back, like taking it back to when I was a teenager, right? Like I was always entrepreneurial by nature. My parents were not entrepreneurial at all. So I believe there is something that's just kind of like, I've always just had this different drive and thought process.
Born with it. It's just
Skee. Like it was like no education on it at all. And I've had to learn the hard ways, right? But I just had this like driving spirit. So I never worked like a real job. I was like hustling, selling PlayStations and Xboxes and sneakers and stuff. And that's how I made a lot of industry contacts through that, I ended up, sending a letter to the CEO of Loud Records, Steve Rifkin, I got connected with him selling PlayStation, and 2 months later sent him a letter after I built a little rapport with him on what I thought he was doing wrong with his label. And he's like, come work for me. And that was the last thing I expected. Like, I wanted a Wu-Tang Clan or an Exhibit hoodie, right? Like, and I would have been the happiest person. Maybe I could have started a street team in Minneapolis, and he offered me a job when I was, still I think, sophomore, junior in high school. So I figured a way. I was like, all right, so like, figured a way to join our league. Never thought of LA as like a home, right? Was born in New York, grew up in Minneapolis, and when I was 17, packed a U-Haul. And fortunately, it all worked out. But it was just like these weird scenarios. And I wanted to be I knew I wanted to be in the music business. I knew I wanted to kind of be entrepreneurial, and that opportunity just arose. So you just kind of jumped at it. But it was through all that preparation and just that random kind of intersection that, if I wasn't selling, if he didn't need a PS2 for his son for Christmas, I would have never been connected with him in the first place. So things like that have happened so many times in my life, being in the studio with, artists early on, and I was around Game and knew him and started, producing 300 bars, which really gave me my kind of like inroads in the music industry as a public face. Even getting into the business side, making the connections to figure out how to invest in companies and raise money and build businesses. I have no idea. Getting into sports is just a passion of mine. And now to be, kind of a leader in the space of game day entertainment, understanding that across multiple sports and leagues and teams and stuff has just been a dream come true. But, something that I've gotten into by accident, but not accident, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think people don't recognize, like, you dropped Steve Rifkin, like such a pioneer in like street marketing, culture marketing. Like if there's anyone to learn from back in those days, like that was the guy.
I mean, he literally invented the street team and
Exactly.
as the trademark on that. So Steve's my guy, and it's great. We're working with him now in the Realist. So I love Steve.
I want to go back to like, because the DJ and DJ Skee, like you're credited with like also breaking some of like the artists we all know today, Kendrick and Gaga and Lorde and all these amazing folks that you were the first to kind of be like, there's something here. Where do you think, was it just being like attuned to the streets that you developed an ear for like what felt new, what felt innovative? How did you kind of develop that part of your talent?
Yeah, that was it for me. It was always, I just kind of always was seeking out that, right? Like I always loved being first. And as a DJ, right? Like I grew up in the mixtape era, back when mixtapes were about, that's how music was introduced, right? Like you'd go to Canal Street and get a DJ Clue mixtape or K Slay mixtape or whatever, right? And that's where, hip hop especially was breaking. So I was always like intrigued by that. Stretch Armstrong was the first one that really put me under his wing. And he's the one that actually introduced me to Rifkin back in the day. And I remember him like hanging out in the studio as a 16-year-old at like Hot 97. And, DJ Premier was dropping off,
Yes.
Stretch
was the
song
goat back then. Yeah.
that he did. Yeah. Like Method Man's in the other room and Method Man and Redman in another room, like, getting yelled at by security for having too much smoke, obviously from things. Right. So like, I was always intrigued by like new music and breaking it as a DJ. That was kind of what I learned at Foundation and what I aspired to be as a teenager. And that just kind of carried on. And I was always trying to seek out what's next. And like the through line, I'd say like the unique skill set that I've always had is just kind of seeing where trends are going, not being super, super early where I'm like 10 years ahead, but I'm like, oh, like this person's really good. They deserve a shot, or this product is good, right? This kind of market segment, whether it's even sneakers or streetwear or something, right? Is or collectibles now is about to happen, and figuring out how I can, kind of help utilize my platform to amplify that to the world.
Yeah, it feels like that sort of underpriced attention has been a common theme of you identifying the right person at the right time, like just before they kind of get big. Can you talk a little bit about how that sort of fed into your marketing approach? Because you're also a brilliant marketer. You've done a lot of great work with big brands. So maybe talk about how those things intersect.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, right? Like for me as a DJ, right? At the end of the day, we are just megaphones, right? We're amplifying, and especially back in the day when it really mattered, when I was doing radio, TV, mixtapes, like those platforms don't really exist in the way that I did them, right? Like, so this generation might not understand them because it's a whole new era. But back then, like we were the conduit between an artist and the world, right? So like I got approached and got to hear everything, and you just kind of, would follow your gut and see what you liked. And like, look, if you have good taste and stuff and other people are around it and feel the same way, right? Like you kind of see something there. And then I would just leverage my platform to go do that. And like, well, it's amazing. And I get all this credit for a lot of these incredible artists, right? I was fortunate to be there and saw talent early and helped amplify it. There was equally another group of artists that were, that I thought were equally as good and stuff. And for whatever reasons also just didn't make it. Right. So not like everybody that I put on, I'm not like, oh, if I just had that, magic touch where everything you touch, it was
100%
there.
hit.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like there's been so many artists I'm like, oh, they're definitely going to be a star. And for whatever reason, the timing, the team around them, like external circumstances, somewhat of luck, like it doesn't always happen. So, for me, I was always just trying to put on as many people as I could and introduce and expose those things. And it carries over into the other world. I always thought DJs, especially in the era that I grew up in DJing, it's a little different than today, right? Like we were the people touring the world, bringing sneaker culture. You look at what AM, RIP, Clark Kent, RIP, right? Like these guys were the biggest, I would say more so than any rapper. They were the real like sneakerheads, right? Like it was just kind of in our nature or something, like all of those things aligned. We always wanted to be first with technology. I became really good friends with just Blaze back in the day just because he's like a tech nerd, right? And we were like bugging out on buying, like, sending each other. I was doing all the marketing for the T-Mobile Sidekick back in the day, and he was giving me like Motorola devices, and like it's always been like tech, streetwear culture, kind of even art, and like DJing in that world was what we grew up in, and it all kind of goes together. And for us, it was, our platform was like exposing that to people, whether it's showing them a new pair of sneakers, a new record, a new type of electronics.
It's funny because I cut my teeth as a marketer in the music industry, both on the label side, music video, but also at the time was working at Green Street Recording, which was like one of the pioneering recording studios in New York for hip hop. And same, I'm like, yeah, I talk about what it's like to be in the studio with Tribe Called Quest when they're doing Low End Theory, or like, De La Soul or Public Enemy, but forgetting that there was 50 other artists that came through that studio that, were one and done, or, and so you have great stories when you work in the music industry. It's super fun. And that's almost the currency you get, because it's not like it pays a lot back then. But you get to be at, like on the fringes of those moments. And I think you said something which is really interesting. And I feel like Avery and I have talked to a lot of people who are trying to reimagine the fan experience. Like those hip hop mixtapes, because we used to do, when I had my marketing company, we would do buys on mixtapes, right? You go to like Silver Surfer or any of these guys, and you would, you would like make a deal with someone. They would like feature an artist, or they would feature a product in it. And that was the most amazing word of mouth was the idea that someone buys a mixtape, copies it, and gives it to their friend, which is like true hand to hand. Was such a fun time to be in the music biz. But we dropped the T-Mobile Sidekick. To me, was the first like crush technology device in the mobile, like in the mobile future. How did you get involved with that? Because I think a lot of our audience might not understand the power of the Sidekick, but that flip, like that flip of the screen was such a flex back in the day that it was truly amazing.
I have one. I don't know if it's laying around right here, but no, it was incredible, right? Like I would say it was the first consumer iPhone. Like there was BlackBerry at the time, and it was before the BlackBerry was super advanced, but it was super business, right? Like too expensive. There was also on the other side, like the two-way pager that a lot of people aspired for, but it was really expensive and not that functional. You could send, it was basically text messages, 160 characters. It had a keyboard, but it was like $60 a month at the time, which, and this is like early 2000s, right? Like that was a lot of money. And literally you couldn't browse. Mobile internet was so bad, right? Like literally 160 characters. And that was a flex. So not many people had that. The Sidekick was the first thing that bridged the gap. So when I saw that, somebody showed me it in a magazine. It was made by this company called Danger in Palo Alto. I was 18 working for Steve and, his marketing company, trying to land clients. I literally tried to get their attention. I saw it and I was like, this can be like, saw everybody wanted this two-way pager, saw where technology was going. I literally wrote a whole letter and kind of marketing plan, overnighted a FedEx letter, found who the VP of marketing was. Somebody that worked for her called me and said, hey, I happen to be in LA. She got your letter. Can we meet? And met with them and said, hey, here's what I think we should do, right? Here's what's out there in the market today. Let's leverage this thing called product placement. This was not like in existence really at the time. I was like, these are the people that matter. Let's give it to the influencers. And at the time, it's like hip hop culture and all of these things really matter because whatever happens here happens everywhere else. So it's like, look, this is how we make it cool. Let's give it to these people and let's give it to these DJs and these people you may not know. All, like, just trust me. Let's hook them up and it will pay off in dividends. And they give us a shot. That was my first client I ever had. So at 18 years old, ended up, running all of the marketing for this new product. And T-Mobile didn't actually take it serious. And once they came out with it, we gave, did a little product placement. It just exploded, right? And it was, great for me because not only did I like become known as like this whiz kid behind the marketing of this, at the time, it was like the iPhone, right? Like not globally on that scale, but in our culture, right? Like that impactful, and got to be the conduit where every artist was hitting me because I was the gatekeeper of like who got them, who got the new versions early. We were giving out free service. Never paid anybody for anything at the time, which is wild. Now everybody wanted money. Like we were there, and I remember like we were just giving them out, and it was organic. Like the key moment was Jay-Z, right? He put it in the first video he had with Beyonce, "03 Bonnie and Clyde," and we just saw it. Like we gave him a couple and wanted him to have it. And he loved it so much he put it in the video organically, and then it was in the Excuse Me This video with Pharrell. From there, it just took off. I was in there with everybody, and that's how I was around like 50 and all these huge artists, Snoop, getting it to them, and
I feel like Paris Hilton was the one I kept remember seeing.
Paris we gave, and then T-Mobile got behind it. Then they were like, oh, we should do this, we should do more of this, and then they really leaned in. But we also created the first collab devices. It was really interesting. If you look at the collabs, the first ones, I was like, let's do male and female ones. Let's go to culture and let's do something really cool. So I brought in Mr. Cartoon, biggest tattoo artist at the time. They were like, who is this guy? I'm like, trust me, he's an artist. It'll look cool. He has every artist in his studio every night. This is the culture. Like, this will help sell the whole thing. And on the female side, I was like, Juicy Couture was the brand at the time. I'm like, let's do a pink version, Juicy Couture sweat, all that, cover both elements, right? And not the most obvious. They didn't have a ton of money. And it was Mr. Cartoon. Like, it's why, you know, he was a mentor to me, but it was his first really major like corporate deal that really helped set him off. And now he's Super Bowl commercials and stuff, which is insane. So, man, it was such an era. You're bringing me back, Sam. Sorry to ramble.
I feel like
what I loved after that ramble was Whiz Kid, which I feel like is a perfectly encapsulates just Skee energy.
It's fun.
Sam, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, like, I remember working with agencies back in the day where they would like, and when you bring up the idea of product placement, I'm sure also Gary was very much on this trend. I feel like he and I, we were working out some things back when the agency first started, but it was an agency called Cake out of London that just every 2 weeks would send Madonna bottles of Evian to her house when she was living in London with Guy Ritchie, only because every once in a while she would grab a bottle to walk out and then get shot with paparazzi. And like, it was, for them, it was the cheapest marketing they could find. It was just literally just sending to celebrities cases.
100%. It still works, by the way, hand to hand. Like, you still get those things. Like, it's not like people know what the value is and now they want money and stuff. But if you have a great product, people want it. They'll do it. It starts with a good product too. If it was a shitty product, like, nobody would have done it. I was like, no, this is really good. And when people got it, they were like, yes, it is. So you have to pair those things. That alone doesn't do it. But when you pair those things, that's when magic really happens.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I mean, seeding still works. Like we're all friends with Natalie Bruss, and she had a product launch that was actually seeded out, of course, to famous people. One video gets going the right way, and they were, she was sending us screenshots of sold out products. So seeding still works. Organic seeding on social really still works. So, people forget about that. Yeah, a lot of big influencers want money, but if they love a product, they might want to share it. So now you talked a little bit about your latest venture, the Realist. Can you unpack this a little bit for Gen Z listeners? What is the Realist? Why did you found it? What are you guys doing? Because it's some really cool stuff.
Sure. I'd always been a collector since I was a kid. In fact, my first business when I was like 8 years old, right, was like selling baseball cards, like so many other people that they grew up in the 90s. And, when I saw kind of a lot of the writing on the wall with things happening, especially in sports cards and collectibles, the late like 2018, 2019, obviously pandemic 2020 really is what accelerated that. It reminded me a lot of what had already happened in streetwear. And I had a front row seat of that, again, being somebody that was just, again, buying shoes. That's how I met Fat Joe when I was 16. I was buying him, importing Air Forces and things, and got to see the momentum, got to see it all explode, was fortunate to be a super early investor in StockX and witness the business success. And, when I looked at the world, like in the sneaker world, despite doing like documentaries, collaborations, all of these things in sneaker culture, biggest success financially, right, is a small investment in that. But I only got that deal flow because I was kind of placed in the scene. Saw the same thing kind of happening with collectibles and doubled down. We launched a fund in the space called Mint 10, where with Carter and Courtney Ream, who run M13, and we basically, invested in 25 companies in the space from Whatnot on down to, as well as buying baseball cards and memorabilia. But in that time, I realized memorabilia to me felt like something that was, everybody was focused on cards. When I saw like a Luka Doncic card selling for, $4 million that had a like small piece of a jersey cut up. And in essence, that card is artificially scarce. They're saying it's a one of one, they're cutting it up. Then seeing like a jersey game worn during his rookie year selling for like 400 grand, that's truly scarce, right? And it's the full thing. That delta didn't make sense if you were to ask anybody on the street, which one do you think is more valuable? Something cut up that's artificially made or something that's actually really the full thing that's there? Which one is worth 10x? Most people would probably say the other. But and then realizing like why the value wasn't there, it was this market that wasn't mature, and it really boiled down to authentication. Going back in the day and looking up like Operation Bullpen, where the FBI estimates, at a high level, up to 90% of memorabilia in the marketplace, was fraudulent, which is just wild. And you think of how easy it is to do, and how certificates of authentication on paper really mean nothing. I realized the industry was broken, and, we found who was best out there. We saw what others were doing. Notable systems were like what Major League Baseball implemented with this witness-based authentication. We had new technologies like blockchain ledger that allowed us to kind of keep transparent records, that allowed consumers to see what was out there and not trust us and say, hey, there's only 10. And by the way, we're printing 100 of them, and also enable us not to get hacked, right? Unless the entire system's hacked, and that's a much bigger conversation. But the likelihood of that, is, you all know, watching this, especially this audience, is slim to none. And then leveraging, just obviously, like, the other side of that was like, one, we had to fix authentication, which we think we've done and we've built. Again, if photo matching is here, COA is in essence worthless. Photo matching has been, riddled with fraud. It's good. It's as good as you can get for past things. But anything modern, it makes no sense to utilize that technology alone. So we utilize people on the ground documenting, covertly marking that. And then the other side of it was really onboarding a whole new generation of people and introducing them to memorabilia. If you were to ask the average person, and take music, right? Like, take a Taylor Swift fan. They're like, if you ask them they're a collector, they'll say no. Then they go to a Taylor Swift show and they buy they're exchanging friendship bracelets and keeping that. They're buying the shirt and waiting hours in line for merch that say the night of that show, right? Like, let's say Thursday, September 4th, Los Angeles, SoFi Stadium, whatever it is. They're definitely collectors from that. They just haven't been introduced. And imagine now if you gave them the ability to own a guitar string or a wardrobe piece or something that Taylor's touched, or a set list that you can frame on the wall. Everybody is a collector. They just don't realize it. And we think high level, like this market just hasn't been introduced to it in the right way. And even when we look in the game worn markets and sports, I was talking with one of the most prominent figures in the space. We both had the same, I asked him the question. I had the same number in my mind. I said, how many people do you think are buying game used NFL jerseys over $1,000 today? We both said 5,000, like, independently. So very small amount. So I'm like, wow, there's this few, despite seeing these huge sales. We just sold, Cooper DeJean jersey for over 10 grand, a Jake Elliott kicker jersey. I think the highest kicker jersey publicly sold, at least that we could see, at least in a while, for like 7 grand. Amazing sales, but this is with such a small audience. And also, like, a lot of these sites people don't know exist. There's so much fraud, people don't know what to trust. And they're just very dated in terms of the way that they market and push. And they're speaking to the same audience. For us, it's like, how do we onboard a new generation of collectors? And it's by doing things like we do with the Philadelphia Eagles, where not only are we selling these jerseys with the top level provenance, where we are on site at the game in the locker room collecting and marketing them, we're also taking and creating entry level items for $30, like grass from the end zone that we can't keep in stock, that anybody can afford. And that also serves as a gateway to introduce them into collecting. So for us, we saw this grand opportunity starting with authentication, but then also like in how we market this and how we photograph the items. We brought in fashion photographers. We started creating much more captivating content to introduce these things to younger, more diverse demographics, in addition to the collectors of today. And that's where, the only reason I looked at even launching this business was not trying to do anything else with everything that I had going on, but it made too much sense. And I didn't think anybody else had the unique peer view that I had.
I love that. I want to talk about collectibles for a little while longer, but first I want to ask you, because you mentioned that the sort of, you hope you or believe you've solved the authenticity challenge, which we all know is a big one in this game. We saw a big backlash in the gaming world to blockchain. They sort of, once the idea of digital ownership came along, they were very suspect. I'm wondering how much the collectibles audience also wants to stick to traditional roots. So I know you've said a lot around the idea of digital collectibles as much as you talk about physical collectibles. And so what do you think is the sentiment around sort of blockchain based? Like, is crypto too controversial for a mass audience on the collectible side? Or do you think that that's an opportunity and an opening?
Great question. I think if you look at the collectors that exist today, I mean, we're talking a very small subset, especially like 5,000 people buying NFL jerseys. They don't want blockchain. They don't know what it is. They don't understand it. They don't trust it. There's been obviously like the NFT market gives a lot of people hesitation and cause for that. I'm a big fan and believer in it, but I understand that. That being said, we just look at fundamentals, right? With everything, the same way I talked you through why a card versus the actual thing, like that delta. if you were starting a company, like what is the best security way? Who cares if you like or hate blockchain? If you're just looking down, how do we keep records, right? In a way that is transparent, that everybody can see, because the problem in memorabilia is people will take a COA and clone it and duplicate it. Will tell people they only made one and there's 1,000 of them. If it's on a public ledger, everybody can see and exactly know what that is. And we can't change it once it's there, which also from a security perspective, our biggest vulnerability would be over time being hacked, right? Like if we get hacked, somebody could sure go create new ones, but you would see they're all created on this date, right? And you could flag them and everybody would be able to be like, oh, don't buy anything on that date because it's there. I mean, challenge, it fixes a lot of things and brings transparency in. So for us, we're not doing something where like, where it gets a little too far for us is like, we thought of this, like, do we want to take transactions and sell an ETH and crypto? And like, not today. I believe there will be a future potentially there. I'm not fighting that fight. We don't need to. But from a record keeping perspective, there's no way better than blockchain. And that's why we decided to use that. And everybody that we've told, and it kind of works in the background. People don't need to do anything. They don't need to see it. We're not giving it in their wallets. It's all, we just do it all in one standard wallet that we control, because it doesn't matter. The value isn't that NFT per se, right? The value is the item itself, but we pair it with that so you can see what the marketplace is. There's no better way, and it's been a real positive reception for us. So I think it's just, the thing people always said about Web3 is people shouldn't even know that it's Web3, and that's kind of what we do, right? We don't if you look deep, you see what that is, and we explain it, but that's not like our marketing lead. We just use it because it's the absolute best technology and best use case for what we say. No matter what you think of anything, it's the best way to keep, I guess, immutable record.
And you touched a little bit on NFTs. You've also been sort of a digital media innovation pioneer too. What's your current sort of feeling on non-fungible tokens, digital assets? What's your current sentiment?
I still like it long term, right? Like I still love it. I still have my like crypto punk and stuff. I'm a fan, and I actually think that over time,
Punks are on the rise. Punks are hot right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, we're good now. Right. It's funny. And that was an obvious play for me too. Everybody was telling me, like, when I had to make a big one, I was like, do we do ape or crypto punk? I felt like, going OG and stuff was the right move. And in retrospect, made the right decision there. But I think for me, I envision a future, right? Like I'm looking at all of the things that I own and stuff too. Like there's going to be a point where you have and collect too much. And similar to the digital world, right? Like you see kids in Roblox spending more money on Robux and clothes in virtual gear than they do in real gear, and the reason is because they spend more time with their friends in their Roblox body than they do their real world body.
Hot topic right now are those really kids. You've seen everything that's been going on over the last few months.
It's true, right? But I think you could take any skins in any of these games, right? And I think the opportunity for me to, while I have a really cool, see what I have. This is a sample. This isn't the one that we sold. This was the early like Snoop Dogg blunt, right? Like smoked Snoop blunt. We sold this for $5,000, right? Like, well, it's awesome that it's here and people can see it. I believe the future is going to be showcasing this digitally, so you, Sam, and Avery could see it because you're not here in Los Angeles. You're not in my office. You're not walking in and you can see that. But if the whole world could see that and interact, and I could show that off in a new way, I believe that long term, it's going to have tremendous values, kind of mirror, and like, imagine if, I don't know if we're vaulting that in the future, if people want to hold it, it's probably going to be a combination of both. But I think being able to showcase who you are through like basically digital receipts is going to be wildly valuable. I really like that. I think like, and Gary's spoken a lot about this, right? How like your ETH bio, in essence, one day it's better than your Twitter bio or your, whatever social media bio, right? Like, cause in social media, I could go, right, I'm president of Iceland, and maybe I am. There probably somebody might even believe you, right? Like you never know. You got to have receipts. It says so much more about you. And yeah, you can wipe it clean. But if you're like, oh, he went and knew Kendrick Lamar and went to his first show in 2006 and it's dated, like that says so much more about you. So I really do believe in that long term. And I think like, obviously we saw an early acceleration. It was a little too early during the COVID time, but I'm still a big believer in that long term. And we've even built this business to think on like how we can allow consumers to showcase their products in a bigger way as that becomes more and more important.
Skee, I'm interested in, because I read a bunch of interviews or listened to a bunch of interviews with you. It feels like you're also a little bit of like a critic on the current collectibles market, especially around the idea of what feels, I think, like we're pricing a lot of young folks out of this. So I would love for you to tell us your thoughts on like what's working in collectibles and where these are going to go, but also really what's not working and what we collectively as like a community should get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the pricing thing, like, and we saw this happen, and specifically in COVID, right? Like, it brought in all these people that were speculating, and as prices go up, it's great. Then as soon as they fell, people are left holding the bag. It can't be just about money, right? There's obviously an element of that there. I remember as a kid, 89 Griffey Upper Deck card was like the grail, and it was like $100, maybe $120. Like, I couldn't afford that. And that was amazing. Nowadays, $100 gets you like apparently not very much in this industry. And you're seeing boxes and breaks go for so much. And we're not going to have a new generation of people, or it's going to be just the ultra rich, which I don't think is enough to sustain the market. And I think that's the same thing in collectibles. That's why I want entry level products. Of course, there's going to be, $1 million sales and one-of-one items. It's awesome. There always will be that. We need to have things across every level. And it also serves as onboarding. The kid that couldn't afford a $100 card was me back in the day, right? As a kid, I would have bought a $20 card, and I did, right? And now I've elevated to spending way too much in memorabilia and things, right? So like that is the onboard ramp long-term for the generation, and that's how you build those markets. So I am nervous that it's just about money, and people only think on what value is. It used to be as a kid, I was buying things. I'm like, oh, can I get this? Oh, that's cool. Oh, that happens to be worth that, right? Now it's like instant lookup, instant money. We saw it happen in sneakers and stuff too, and that's what I think has helped, kind of torpedoed a lot of things in that market. And now it's stabilized a little bit. I am worried so much. Everything is just gamified and gambling in essence, right? And you're seeing gambling on top of
You just said it.
Literally.
Yeah. Right? Which is fine. Like opening a pack of cards is gambling, but now people are like, there's 3 layers on top. You're already gambling when you open a box of cards, but now you're buying a slot in a break of a repack. Cards already been opened. Then they're repacking and making their own artificially, basically, again. And then you're buying, getting a chance to buy that. So there's 3 layers of gambling on top of that. And people get addicted to that stuff, right? Like it's real. And I think we're going to see huge issues of, especially young men specifically, like you don't win. They built Vegas. They built all these things. All those big buildings aren't there for charity, right? They share the wins. Over time, it's whoever has the most is going to stay in. And it's addicting, right? And I've had my experiences. I stopped like a decade ago because I was like, dude, I wasn't even going crazy. I was just like, dude, it took the fun out of the games for me. And I know that's why fantasy is great. I'm not saying Ben, I understand. And I work in the industry for it, but something we need to be cognizant of. Not everything can be gambling. We're doing mystery boxes. I think there is a cool, fun element. It allows people to do that, but it can't all just be that. And that is a little bit scary too.
Skee, I do want you to pan the camera to your left for a second, if you can.
Which way? Oh, this way?
Yes, exactly. So
yes, please.
So we have this gladiator outfit, which is, I believe, a drop you guys are doing.
That's what he's wearing tonight, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's my outfit for tonight.
It's this TikTok gear, but this is from Gladiator 2. I think you guys are doing the drop from costuming from the movie, which just came out. Oh, look at this. Amazing.
Yeah, Praetorian helmet. These are sick.
But I wanted you to do that because I also think I've been thinking a lot about the power of nostalgia and how much of collecting is about reclaiming a part from your past and your history that you can relive that moment over and over and over. And I think that will happen, obviously, in the same thing that a skin on your Forza car in a video game, that you own, you could look back on that and find a way to display it as much as owning a piece of your favorite movie. What I love about this is there is a scarcity element built into nostalgia, right? There's only this many of a thing. So it feels very different to me than, someone doing a limited release where we're going to sell 10,000 of a signed art print, which you're building really to put something on your wall just to say, oh, I'm like part of a community. So what is it that do you think about the idea of nostalgia as part of the driver for this? Where I think maybe beyond gambling is just the idea of I don't know if it's reclaim youth. There's something going on there that I keep thinking about. What is the power of nostalgia in the collecting business?
100%. I mean, that's the foundation of it, right? That's why we buy it. I mean, things that are selling, when you look at a Michael Jordan jersey selling for over $10 million, it's no different than
what?
Yeah. That's Michael Jordan finals jersey, $10.2 million a few years ago, right? Like,
oh my
there was
goodness.
a private sale of $12 million that wasn't publicized of that jersey, right? Rumored.
Wow.
Right? So
that's a game worn finals jersey, just to be clear.
Yeah. And it's literally
crazy.
No different.
Was it washed? I'm just curious now.
Washed? It actually makes it less money if it's washed. I don't know if that one
That's what I
was.
was thinking.
People want
it
DNA
washed.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's no different than that is no different than any other, jersey that you're in theory, right? It's not made of gold. It's not anything else. It's the fact that Michael wore it. He only wore that won in that game. So that's what the value is of nostalgia. So 100% it's playing into that. And that's why I love the memorabilia market, because it's like when you do cards, and I love cards, right? But like if you get into just money perspective and if you think of it logically, right? Like you're artificially manufacturing these things. And now I think the other problem in the card game is there's 101 of ones of every release, right? It used to be there was one or a couple of variations. Now there's so many, I think it's diluting the whole value. When you look at things like that, there truly is, there's only one Freddie Freeman ball that he hit a home run on, right? So like the value of that is going to be outsized versus anything else. And it really represents something in a memory. And that's all this is, right? And that's why I'm so bullish on this market, because everybody's a fan of something. And there's so many niches in the world. We talked about Taylor Swift earlier. There's a whole community of people that love Gladiator. I mean, for me, Gladiator is one of my favorite film franchises of all time. I've watched, it was the first DVD I watched, right? Like back in the day. And, you know, the props, by the way, look insane, right? When you're looking at, you know, this, I bought this for touring helmet. I think we sold out of them already, but like, it's just so sick looking and it represents the film and is truly scarce. And it wasn't built to be sold, right? Like it was just something that kind of found into that. For me, I mean, my foundation of sports was the 1991 Twins. It's when, you know, we had just moved to Minnesota. And that's what got me into sports. It was because there was so much excitement. I think kids need like a moment in excitement. And that's what put this lifelong exception. And I just bought this, right? Like one of my grails. 1991 Twins trophy, and you know, even something stupid like a piece of, you know, I guess the Metrodome roof with printed 91 on it.
Yeah.
For you guys don't care about it, right? And there's value, but it's those things. But any kid that grew up in Minnesota and was around that era, that is the most valuable thing to me. And it's, for me, it's not about there's plenty of trophies and plenty of memorabilia that I have is worth way more than this, right? But for me, that's, you know, some of the most precious stuff that I own because of the memories and nostalgia. It brings me together with my family and my dad taking me to the game, right? So like, that's what it represents to me 100%. And we tell ourselves like, there's other kids like me, so there's going to be value if I want to sell it. And I think it, you know, has the opportunity to go up in value, but 100% it's the nostalgia. It's like, you can either invest, and I think this whole generation realizes like you can either invest in stocks and things like that, which are great, but you're not emotionally connected to, or invest in something like this that you can look at every day and hopefully goes up.
No, what you said in there that I thought was really interesting that I think a lot of our listeners will resonate with is you said one of my grails. And that's different. Like I can tell you that whatever baseball thing you were just holding up, that wouldn't really mean much to me. But to me, it might be like a really special bag that I got at a really cool store, had a really, like it was a limited edition. That would mean a lot to me. And you and Sam would be like, looks like another Chanel to me, Avery. So it's such a personal thing.
100%.
I think what's interesting also is like, I have a couple watches, right? But the most valuable watch for me is the one that my father gave me that he bought when he was 18, like an Omega Seamaster from the 60s, which if I was to buy it new, it'd be $300. Like it's not a very expensive watch on the market, but I'm like, this thing is priceless because of the fact that like it was my dad's first luxury purchase that he made when he was 18.
Yeah, there's interesting things. There's like personal like mementos, right? Like I just moved stuff out from all the fire stuff just to be safe of like, not stuff that's valuable of like stuff that my mom had, right? It's worth a penny if I sold it. You know, I probably couldn't even give it away, right? But to me, it's more priceless than everything. The fact that I moved it out over other things. Then there's items that like 91 Twins trophy, meaningful to me in a very small subset of people, but to those people, it's everything, right? And then there's, you know, the bigger you get, like a Jordan jersey, it's probably much more meaningful to a broader scope, and that's where kind of the value lies in terms of where those things are. But nostalgia is everything, right?
Not to be reductive, but AI can't reproduce that.
That's
right?
exactly my point. Yeah.
Right? Like this is something that is only from a physical human experience that you just, no matter what, we are always going to
knowing
like,
that it's real, especially as people realize, like, look, I've realized half the stuff that I've probably bought over the years is probably not real from different sources and all of those things. So you want to, I think like, we believe high level dictating and being able to be like the arbitrator definitively, like what's real and what's not, working straight from the source, collecting those is going to be wildly valuable. And then presenting these items in an elevated way and introducing this concept to people so you can surround yourselves with things that you love. When I look at this trophy every day, it reminds me of that. That's why I have it, right? Like, yes, there's a financial value in those things, but that's not the only, if it was just financial, again, I would have bought stocks with that money.
Well, I'm gonna service this since you just brought it up. You're sitting in LA right now. This is just like literally days after some catastrophic fires, some disrupted the city, and you kicked off this sort of as we were chatting before we got started of talking about rebuilding LA and the energy from the builders of LA. You've been in LA for a long time. What kind of a message do you want to share with the Gen Z community of maybe ways they can help, things you're feeling on the ground as a person who's, been there and really living through this right now?
It's wild. I mean, I'm fortunate that my house is still standing. Everything is good. Had, moved stuff out, right? In preparation. Like it was real. It got close enough, but we're fine. And it's weird because now, and what I'm scared of, like everything, it's like Thanksgiving. Everybody shows up and donates their time. And then after that, the rest of the year is when people really need it. You're starting to see the same thing, right? Like, oh, free food for first responders. Oh, this, come help there. This is going to take years and years and years. And we need to support people, not just now, not just while it's in the public eye and while we're thinking about this before we move on to whatever's next. But this is going to be years. And while we are okay, and it's so weird, it can be like I'm looking out the window, incredible view downtown LA from Hollywood, perfect day. You would not imagine anything is wrong. If you were to go over to Palisades, to Altadena, to anywhere affected, it looks like the apocalypse. And it's, if you're affected, you're affected.
A tale of two cities, literally, that you're living in right now.
It's insane, right? And like, it made me for the first time really think like what that means to lose everything. When I came out here, I had nothing. Nothing is still filling a U-Haul with a mattress, with toothbrush, with blankets, with plates, right? With, some clothes, with underwear. People have nothing, no matter what money you had, right? Like you could have had a $25 million house or, a $250, sharing a room with somebody. It's all kind of an even playing field for that. Obviously, some people are going to be more disproportionately affected in terms of being able to build back and what's there now. So I think it's important to find those that really need things right now, but also like to carry this on. It's not just going to be a quick rebuild. Let's not forget about this. Let's not just like do this for the next few weeks. Like this is going to be something that's real. And yeah, lots more thoughts that we could dive into, but that's high level. I think what is, let's not forget about, like this isn't just like, oh, we solved it and then it's on to the next. Like it's going to be
don't forget about it. Keep, you're in touch with your LA people, and we will certainly be doing the same. Skee, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing so many of your insights, whiz kid life, all the cool things that you've done and will do. I'm not going to let you forget that one. Really, really enjoyed this.
Of course. We're super excited. You guys are the best. So great seeing you, Avery and Sam. And yeah, anything you guys need, let me know. Thank you guys all out there for watching and listening.